It was another bustling morning at Skyport International. Passengers rushed through the terminal, the air buzzing with announcements and the chatter of travelers. Among the crowd was Serena Holloway, her presence effortlessly commanding attention. Her midnight blue gown shimmered softly under the terminal lights, a testament to her taste in understated luxury. Serena wasn't just any traveler. Her husband, Adrian Holloway, wasn't just a successful entrepreneur. He owned the very airport she was standing in. But Serena didn't flaunt her privilege. She carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who knew their worth without needing validation. Today, though, her poise would be tested. As she approached the security checkpoint, Serena caught the gaze of a security officer who seemed unusually fixated on her. He was a wiry man in his late 40s, with an overly stern expression and a badge slightly crooked on his chest. Something in his smirk felt off, a mixture of condescension and misplaced authority. "Step aside, ma'am," he barked as Serena placed her belongings on the conveyor belt. His tone was sharp, almost performative, as though trying to prove something to the crowd around them. "We'll need to take a closer look." Serena raised an eyebrow, her voice calm but firm. "Is there an issue? I've gone through security plenty of times without trouble." "No issue," he replied, his smirk widening. "Just doing my job." The officer began rummaging through her handbag, taking his time with each item. Serena stood still, her jaw tightening, but she remained silent. She had dealt with unnecessary scrutiny before. This, however, felt different. Then, without warning, the officer reached out and tugged at the hem of her gown. The fabric tore with a sharp rip, the sound cutting through the noise of the terminal. Gasps rippled through the line as passengers turned to witness the scene. Serena staggered back, clutching the shredded edge of her dress. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice trembling with outrage. The officer shrugged, his face a picture of mock innocence. "Looks like it wasn't as sturdy as it looked. Guess you shouldn't wear something so delicate to an airport." The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Some stared in shock. Others whispered behind their hands. Serena's cheeks burned, not from embarrassment, but from the simmering rage bubbling inside her. She could see the smug satisfaction in the officer's eyes, the power trip he was relishing. "You'll regret this," she said, her tone icy. "Sure, lady," he shot back with a dismissive wave. "File your complaint. Won't change anything." Serena didn't respond. Instead, she pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling as she dialed Adrian's number. He answered on the first ring. "Serena? What's wrong?" She took a deep breath, her voice tight with suppressed anger. "An officer just ripped my dress. Tore it in front of everyone. He's mocking me, Adrian." Adrian's voice dropped into a tone of controlled fury. "Stay where you are. I'll handle this." Serena hung up, her hands clenched into fists. She was done being polite. As she waited, she noticed the whispers growing louder, passengers taking photos and videos. But she didn't care. Her husband was on his way, and when he arrived, things would change. Minutes later, Adrian strode into the terminal. His tailored suit and commanding presence turned heads, but his focus was locked on Serena. He saw her torn dress, the tension in her posture, and the unmistakable fire in her eyes. Without hesitation, he approached her, placing a reassuring hand on her arm. "Who's responsible?" he asked, his voice low but laced with authority. Serena pointed to the officer, who had shifted his attention to the next passenger as though nothing had happened. Adrian's gaze hardened as he marched toward the checkpoint. "Excuse me," Adrian said, his tone calm but unyielding. "Are you the one who handled my wife's security check?" The officer glanced up, his smirk faltering slightly under Adrian's steely stare. Yeah. Why?" Adrian leaned in just enough to make the officer squirm. "Because I own this airport, and I don't tolerate disrespect, especially toward my wife." The color drained from the officer's face. He stammered, trying to explain, but Adrian raised a hand to silence him. "You'll be hearing from legal," Adrian continued. "Pack your things. You won't be working here much longer." As airport management arrived, alerted by Adrian's call earlier, the officer was swiftly escorted away. Serena stood tall, her torn dress a symbol not of defeat, but of her resilience. Adrian turned to her, his eyes softening. "Are you okay?" he asked. I will be, Serena replied, her voice steady. But this isn't over. And she meant it. This wasn't just about a ruined dress. It was about standing up to those who thought they could demean others without consequence. Serena was determined to make sure no one else endured what she had. Just as Serena was about to dial Adrian again, her phone buzzed in her hand. She answered without hesitation, relief flooding her voice. Adrian, where are you? His voice, low but filled with restrained anger, came through. I'm pulling up now. Give me 5 minutes. This ends today. Serena felt her shoulders relax slightly. I'm right at the checkpoint. Waiting. Good. Don't move. I'll make sure this is handled the way it should be, Adrian said firmly. His voice carried the weight of a man who knew how to command respect, and she knew she could count on him. Moments later, Adrian entered the security area like a storm. His tailored navy suit and purposeful stride caught everyone's attention. He exuded authority, and his sharp eyes scanned the room until they landed on Serena. For a brief second, his gaze softened at the sight of her torn gown, but then his focus snapped back. He strode directly toward the TSA desk. You. Now, Adrian barked, addressing the TSA supervisor, a petite woman who was clearly caught off guard. Sir? She asked cautiously, glancing between Adrian and Serena. Adrian didn't wait for her to catch up. My wife was humiliated and assaulted by one of your employees. You can either fix this, or I will. His voice was calm, but steely, and his presence left no room for argument. The supervisor blinked, clearly flustered. Sir, I'll need to look into the situation. Adrian cut her off with a glare that seemed to freeze her in place. You don't need to look into anything. The agent tore her dress in plain view of everyone. This wasn't a mistake. It was malicious, and I won't stand for it. Serena stepped closer, her voice steady but sharp. This isn't just about me. That agent crossed a line. I won't let him or anyone else think they can treat people this way. The supervisor glanced nervously at the agent in question, who stood by the checkpoint trying, and failing, to appear indifferent. Adrian noticed him immediately. He pointed, his voice cutting through the room. That's the one. Get him over here. Now! The agent froze, his expression faltering as he realized the weight of what was happening. The supervisor hesitated, but then motioned for the agent to approach. He shuffled forward reluctantly, his earlier bravado replaced with discomfort under Adrian's piercing stare. Adrian didn't hold back. You ripped her dress and mocked her in front of a crowd. Do you think that's acceptable behavior? The agent opened his mouth to speak, but Adrian continued before he could respond. Save it. You've already embarrassed yourself enough. The crowd around them watched in silence, the tension palpable. Serena didn't waver, meeting the agent's gaze with unwavering resolve. She wanted him to feel the weight of what he'd done, not just to her, but to everyone he'd treated poorly under the guise of authority. Turning back to the supervisor, Adrian said, This man shouldn't be employed here, or anywhere. He's a liability to your entire operation. The supervisor nodded quickly, her face pale. Understood, sir. We'll take immediate action. Immediate action means firing him. Today, Adrian pressed. And while you're at it, issue a formal apology to my wife. Publicly. The agent began to protest, but Adrian silenced him with a cold look. Don't bother. Whatever excuse you're about to give doesn't matter. Actions have consequences. As the scene unfolded, an airport spokesperson arrived, looking frazzled. Adrian turned his attention to them without missing a beat. This isn't just about my wife. This is about accountability. Make sure your staff knows that behavior like this won't be tolerated. Ever? The spokesperson nodded rapidly. We'll address the situation immediately, sir. Please accept our sincerest apologies. Serena stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. This isn't about an apology. It's about ensuring this doesn't happen again. To anyone, Adrian placed a hand gently on her back, a silent gesture of support. The agent was quickly escorted out, his face a mixture of shame and anger. The supervisor scrambled to regain control of the situation, promising swift action and reform within the department. As the chaos settled, Serena turned to Adrian. You didn't have to do all that, she said softly, though her eyes shone with gratitude. Adrian smirked, his confidence unshaken. I did. No one disrespects you and gets away with it. Together, they left the terminal, heads held high. Serena knew this wasn't just about her dress. It was about standing up for herself and making it clear that no one had the right to demean her or anyone else. As they walked through the exit, Adrian leaned closer, his voice low but full of warmth. You know I'll always fight for you, right? Serena smiled, a quiet fire in her eyes. I know. And today, we fought for more than just me. The world would remember this day, not as a simple altercation, but as a moment that demanded respect and got it.